Welcome to The Bridge, the official podcast for the University of Maryland, Baltimore School of Pharmacy Patients Program. The Patients Program is the bridge between the community and the researchers. The Patients Program created this partnership to help researchers listen to the community's voice in order to build a bridge to an effective learning healthcare community. Here's your host, Rodney Elliott.
Luke Cooper, what's going on, boss? How are you?
Everything's great, man. Let's get it.
Man, listen, Luke, I appreciate you answering the text when I text you. You email me back. Stay connected. We saw each other last year for the first time in a long time at Patients Day. And I knew immediately as soon as I saw you, we picked up right where we left off.
100%.
And for folks that don't know where we left off, I'm Rodney Elliott, Community Engagement Specialist for the Patients Program, sitting here talking to my guy, Luke Cooper. Where we left off before last year, Patients Day, was right around the corner at the Carmelo Anthony Center. Now it's called a UA Powerhouse. We used to hoop every morning, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning, playing basketball, and folks here know me as Rodney Elliott. I knew you back then as Mechanic.
I'm still known as Mechanics, and I know you. I know you then, and I know you now as Noodles.
There you go. There you go. For sure. Yeah, yes.
100.
So, Luke, do me a favor. We're going to dive right into a conversation, man. We're going to talk about some financial literacy. We're going to talk about mental well-being. How did Mechanic become a president's, the UMB president's distinguished scholar? Like, where did that come into play? How did that happen?
Yeah. That's a great starting place, man. It is great to be with you, Rodney. I have nothing but deep admiration for you. You know, those basketball games were everything, man. Like all of us are like former Division I, Division II athletes that, still have it in us to be competitive and play. And, we would get out there and we would be, it would be competitive. And like, those are some of the best days, best games, that we ever played. Right. But, I was taking those moments every day after, the energy I got from those basketball games, and applying it to the work that was ahead of me. Right. And so when I think about, your question, right, of like, how do you go from being the Mechanics? First of all, we got to talk about for a second how I even got that nickname.
That is a good question. How did you get the nickname Mechanic?
I got that nickname because when I first got to Baltimore, right, I graduated. I went to Adelphi undergrad. I played D2 basketball. My coach was Coach Clifford, Steve Clifford, who's now the head coach of Charlotte Hornets. Still very good friends, go to his games and all that stuff. I'm happy to share that experience with my son. I know you have a son that played college basketball as well. And so, I leveraged that experience to get to law school, graduate law school by 24, got my MBA, I don't know, before I was 30, at Babson, and then just like since then just been busy, right? And so when I got to Baltimore, just graduating law school in 01, I was still very active playing basketball, missed it and all that kind of stuff, looking for my tribe, right? And basketball was a way for me to navigate the city, to like understand every aspect of Baltimore and entrench myself into the community. And everywhere I go, whether it's West Baltimore, East Baltimore, wherever I am, people, they know me as Mechanics. They know me as a basketball player. They know me as a good dude. They know me as a dude that's ready to get it with them, whatever the game is, right? And so basketball was that for me. And I got that nickname because our good friend Chucky, liked the way I shot the ball. He thought it was very fundamental. And he's like, you're like a mechanic, man. Like, you're so precise. And so that's how that nickname came, and it just stuck, right? And so they even call my son now Little Mechanics, right? But to your question about like, how do you go from that to becoming the distinguished presidential scholar at the UMB? It's like, I got that distinction through the mud, right? I'm from the mud. I grew up in Quantics Projects in Bridgeport, Connecticut. My father was in prison most of my life. When I was 12, he went away. He got 20 years and did 12 of 20. That same year, I was fortunate enough to go through a program called NIFTY, Network for Teaching Entrepreneurship, learn how to build, solar powered microwaves, learn entrepreneurship, won my science competition, my business plan competition. Those things created healthy self-esteem in me. And then lastly, my mom took us up, over Bridgeport. Bridgeport is not different than Baltimore, very similar, realities and Bridgeport. And she took us up in this tiny Cessna airplane. She had just begged a pilot that, worked at a nearby airport, and was just like, hey, can you do this? And he was like, yeah, we'll figure it out. And like they, this white dude get there, and they take us up, and I see parts of my project housing, and it's like at a distance, and I'm like, oh, well, where I am is not who I am. It disconnected those things for me. So when I think about the distinction, right, that comes with, my title at University of Maryland, Baltimore, all of those things make up that distinction. Not my law degree, graduating top 20% of my class, working at, big firms, working in-house counsel at a Fortune 10, selling to companies for more than $75 million, hiring 80 plus people in my last, gig, managing 200 plus people in another company that I bought and sold. Those things are great things that I've done in my business career, but the things that I pull remarkable distinction from are the things that made me who I am today. My children, right? Watching my daughter go through stage 4 cancer, as I was building the last company. Like, the distinction for me comes from the hardship that I've had to navigate and the learnings that I've gotten from those things, and how I'm transforming, hopefully forever, the way that we interact with our community at the University of Maryland, Baltimore.
Man, you dropped some jewels right there, Luke, about your entrepreneurship. You dropped some personal jewels that I didn't know about, and salute to you and to that. But you talked about those lived experiences in the patients program. We share that terminology a lot. Like, lived experiences are basically who you are, and when we deal with our community in the patients program, we make sure that our community members understand that their experiences, their lived experiences, are just as important as the doctors, the stakeholders that they're engaging with, that they're talking to, that have all those letters behind their names. PhD, MD, doctorate. They are professionals in what they do. You are professionals in your lived experiences, and together, when we do come together in the terms of, in the name of research, or in the name of, patient advocacy, it's important for both sides to be there. And I shared with you something via text a couple months ago, and the title was basically about how self-care is key to both mental and financial well-being. And that's what I wanted to call and talk to you about, because you have some lived experiences in that financial part that makes it relatable when you do go into whatever arena.
That's right.
Right?
Yeah, it's a good setup, Rodney, because you're right. Like, the things we go to school, right? We're taught to do the right thing, and work really hard to develop yourself academically, professionally, athletically, all of those things. But when it comes to academics, we're just taught to go down one chute,
right,
as it relates to just learning about finance, learning about business, learning about entrepreneurship. These things are things that you might learn in college, but on the underlying, sort of base of it, like, we don't know how to manage our own finances, right? And the reality of that is that, most of, like, personal finance and how to gain, like, true financial literacy is taught through family, right? But the family structure, in the Black community and in communities that, the patient advocacy programs are really targeting, those lessons are vacant, right? Those lessons are not there, right? Because years of poverty, years of redlining, years of living below the standard. You know what I mean? We got 30% of the population in the city of Baltimore that lives at or below the poverty line. You've got 93,000 people in Baltimore City that don't have internet access, right? Like, how the hell can we talk about financial literacy if I can't even access the internet, right?
Believe me, I know exactly what you mean, because there was a project that I was working on during the pandemic that before that we had to literally go into these senior homes and have these have these focus group meetings and, do these conversations. But because we couldn't go, okay, cool, let me just send some emails. Let me send a Zoom to these communities. These people didn't have internet. They didn't have devices.
That's right.
So we figured out a way to navigate through that. But that was something that was definitely a Band-Aid was taken off during that time about the digital divide in our community.
That's right. So for us to get to a place of true financial literacy as a community, I think part of it is like reshaping how we think about money and how we think about wealth, how we think about, our own individual, goals, personal financial goals, like, whether we should have them or not, whether they're realistic. Because, my mom could have made all kinds of financial goals when we were growing up, but like none of them would have held true because like things came up, that were out of our control that required whatever money was being saved to be allocated to something different, right? And so that was the reality of nothing was stable, nothing was firm enough to put your feet on and say, okay, this is going to be the same for the next 12, 18, 24 months. And so we're going to take 20% of that and put it into savings, right?
Yeah.
Like those are not realities, right? So I think for financial literacy to really take root, we got to start at a very basic level of like helping to condition people's minds as to why, they need to think this way and what are the tools, that are going to help them get there.
You talked about your family, your mom, and showing you examples for, what it meant to be financially literate to the best of her ability. I know when I was coming up, my mom and dad did that as well, but I looked at a lot of folks in my neighborhood that were quote unquote financially literate. Now their finances, it might not have came from some of the best establishments, but they were folks that, okay, this is when I started hearing about money, this is kind of who I kind of like looked at. And some of those guys we might have hooped with too, right? So
hey, Rodney, the reality is like some of those guys that we're talking about, drug dealers, right? Like straight up, like some of the best drug dealers that we hoop with that we know, right? Like them dudes wasn't driving flashy cars. Like them dudes don't spend crazy. They cheap as hell, right?
True.
They stack, and they're good at stacking their money, right? So their source of income could be different, right?
Right.
But they had the financial prowess to understand how to allocate the dollars once they earned them, right? And so like, whether we learn it that way or however we got to learn it, I think the important part is that, we're sourcing our income in positive ways that are increasing, the positivity and opportunities, for growth within our own community. But then we're also like, putting it to work in a way that is like actionable and consistent. And today we can't do that because, a lot of things in the way.
So that was my next question. You talk about putting it in a way that's actionable. Like, can you share with me an opportunity or a time where you had an opportunity to, again, put those words into actions or put those financial literacy ideas, dreams, goals, aspirations into action, and you were either met with resistance, and how did you work around that? Because at the end of the day, you got to be a problem solver as well, because those lived experiences that folks have in their life or whatever it is, again, we're talking about folks in that 30% at or below poverty level, or folks who are venture capitalists or have money and they figured out ways. How do you navigate through issues and problems from both sides, right? From that lower level to the higher level?
Yeah. It starts with active listening first, right? Like oftentimes people are around you that are dropping gems, right? Yes. They're dropping gems about like how they got their first million. They're dropping gems about how they got a job, how they got their first house, how they got ahead on something, some business opportunity, right? You might catch some chatter about that kind of stuff, but people never really lean in and listen to the hard parts of like how they actually did that, right? Or to the detail and the tactics that they use to actually do those things. They listen to the result, right? Because we all like to win. We all like to feel like, oh, I got, I just magically won $500,000. Well, life doesn't work that way, right? You got to like really lean into the detail and listen in. And so I did that in 2001, and I was fortunate enough that, the story of Luke is not a story of a singular man, navigating this world and is getting to success. It is a tribe. It is a singular man constantly in search of a tribe, right? That was giving him jewels and knowledge and at different junctures in his life. And so when I got to Baltimore, I did meet you and Kirk and everybody else that I was hooping with, but I also met Dave Bramble, right? Dave Bramble was a guy I'd known, an undergrad. Me and Dave were in the same fraternity. And when we were in law school at the same time together, and I wasn't excited about the jobs I had in New York and Connecticut. And he was like, just come to Baltimore. I was like, all right. I didn't know anybody, right? But I figured I could figure it out. And so living with Dave for the first 2 years of my existence in Baltimore was eye-opening, right? First and foremost, I lived on the corner of Lawrence and Madison, right? In West Baltimore. And like, and you already know, bro, every day, every night, all I heard fiends outside and like this, and the street music all night long, street music, right?
Yep.
But like, that was the best sleep I ever got since I've been in Baltimore, because it felt like I was home, right? It felt like I was back in Bridgeport. But even though I was in that environment, right? I was in the house with Dave, and we'd be talking about real estate transactions. We'd be talking about deals. We'd be talking about, industry, right? All of those conversations were illuminating to me about like what I could do. And so you asked me a question of like, okay, give me an example of like me putting my financial literacy training, learnings, lessons to work.
Right.
One of the first was really real estate, right? Once I learned, oh, okay, well, I'm a lawyer. The goal is not to be a lawyer, right? The goal is not to be a lawyer and just make, a couple $100K or $500,000 a year in salary and then like live in a nice house. There's more life that I could have, right? There's more impact and effect that I could have on the city, right? And so real estate was one venue where I could do that. And learning from Dave how it worked, opened my eyes, right? So I said, okay, well, the federal government is giving out a bunch of money for first-time home buyers, right? I don't even have to put more than like 1.5% down. And then like, I didn't even know that you could get seller concessions. And then like, I didn't even know that like, oh, because like in the state of Maryland, if you're a lawyer, right? Like you could use your law degree, as for your real estate license. It's a very easy journey because property law is like, first year of law school, right? Like everything that realtors know, we know that times 10, right? And I took a whole bar here in the state of Maryland, passed on the first try, right? High enough scores to go into wave into DC. And so like I knew Maryland law as it related to property law. I knew how to navigate that in a way that would put more money and put more dollars in my pocket. So putting that together, I bought my first house in Bolton Hill with less than like $1,000 down. It was a 6-unit apartment building. I lived in one unit and then I rented out the rest, right? And I made about, I don't know, it supplemented me about another $500 a month, right? And that was awesome. But then I learned that there was a loophole where you could buy a second house and it would still count as like a first-time home buyer as long as that was within 2 years or something like that. And so I bought a second house, right? I bought my second house on Charles Street in Charles Village. And I rented that one out, made money on that. And then the market started going crazy. I was like, okay, I'll sell that house. I sold that house. I made $180,000. I was like, wow, that's my whole salary in law, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, this is again, putting financial literacy to work means that you're actively listening, developing those jewels, and then actually trying to execute on exactly what those people did, right? And you're going to get stumped along the way.
Yeah, of course.
Right? But that's one example. And I think financial literacy, I put it to work every day, right? I have an app hooked up to my phone that basically, rounds up, any of my purchases and puts a portion of that into my savings. Then I'm also saving, 10% of my salary, my income, from everything, whether it's a speaking engagement, whatever it is, 10% of that goes into savings, right? Those are little things that we can do every single day. Now, life is going to hit you and like, something's going to come up and you're going to need to spend that money, right? But at least you have it to spend, right?
Yeah. And I like what you put in, for those who are listening, again, I'm talking to Luke Cooper, good friend of mine here on the bridge, and thanking him for joining us. He's dropping some great jewels for us. And he's speaking it to him in his language and his word with his numbers. But I think the template, you guys, is something that can be adjusted and put on your life when you're talking about savings, when you're talking about investments. And I believe that a lot of that came from the tribe you talk about, right? And here in West Baltimore, and Baltimore in general, folks hang out with who they hang out with. Folks, mingle with who they mingle with. And when it comes to business, it's a little bit tighter when it comes to business. Folks are a little, they clutched what they got.
100%.
And the jewels that you're dropping right now, I think are fantastic. And hopefully as the Patience Program grows and we're finding ways again to put those templates or give those jewels to our community, that we can put it in a language they understand. But I want to go back and talk to something you talk about. You dropped a jewel. You said healthy self-esteem. Yeah. Self-esteem is flat out, to me, self-explanatory itself. But when you put healthy in front of that, what does that mean to you? Healthy
Yeah.
self-esteem.
It means that the reason why you're doing it, the motivation behind it, the results that you're looking for, all line up with your purpose. All line up with some higher, more important purpose that is important to you, right? And like, so think about it like in the context of basketball, right? If you trying to build your self-esteem, you're trying to get better, right? Like, we all been there, Rodney. I know, you got a long history in Baltimore, building your skill set. If you coming at the game of basketball with like a mindset that like, I got to get good so I can get some girls. I got to get good so I can just like people, because like, Mike Lloyd, everybody want to be like Mike Lloyd. So I'm just going to be like Mike Lloyd. If I can just get in the gym a couple times and be like that, that's not going to build your self-esteem, right? That's not, it's not even going to make you a better basketball player, right? It's got to come from within. It's got to come from a place of true love, compassion for yourself and for your journey, true love and admiration for the place that you want to go to, right? And so, self-esteem when you're 12 and you on the block and ain't nothing around you that's positive, right? Where your self-esteem come from? It come from what I'm wearing on my feet, right? Come from like back in, I'm older than you, Rodney, a little bit, right? And so like I remember Fila was everything, right? The little Fila, people would die in my community over Fila, right? That was a thing. And I wanted a pair of Fila so bad. I wanted a pair of the shell toe Adidas so bad, right? I couldn't afford them, right? But like that me wanting those things, that was coming from a place of like lack. That was coming from a place of poverty, right? Not a place of like high self-esteem, right? Focusing my attention on a business that I was learning how to like build at the time, solar powered microwaves. It wasn't like a real complicated thing, it was cardboard and plexiglass and aluminum foil. And I sold hot dogs in it, right? Like, and I made $1 per hot dog, right? No real genius type stuff. But the reality was that like, oh, I can do that because in our communities, and this is why the patience program is so important. In our communities, we don't know what we can do. We don't even know how powerful we are as a people, as individuals. And quite frankly, that, they might not be dealing with poverty and other challenges, but that's also true of like majority America, right? Most individuals don't know how individually powerful they are, and how they can affect circumstances that that might seem out of their control.
When we're talking about research and we're talking about getting folks involved in research and participating, that is kind of what I do specifically when I go into these senior homes or when I go into Poppleton neighborhood or West Baltimore neighborhood, is doing that, like letting them understand that your lived experiences, because of them, you have an opportunity to change your health outcomes for yourself, for your family members, for your community, for others, by sharing your lived experiences in a safe setting. And I'm thankful for the patient program for providing that, because when you talk about Baltimore, yes, we're home of the wire. Typically, people say that all the time. I hear that. You're a basketball town. Okay, cool. I hear that. But when you talk about research in the health world, they understand that something really not good, not great happened years ago when it comes to research, particularly in the African American community with Henrietta Lacks. That's
right.
People can Google that. So a lot of times when I go out to the community and say I'm Rodney Elliott from the Patients Program and I'm talking to you about research, people, oh man, they close up right away. But when I do find ways to kind of connect with them and break it down to them and let them know that, hey, we understand what happened in the past is the past. We're not ignoring that. But in order for things to change and go forward, we need your help.
That's right.
We need your assistance. We need you to understand that your voice matters. It counts. And we appreciate that, right? And we're all about trusting and building relationships. So my 5 years here at the Patients Program, I'm a lot more knowledgeable about understanding how to build relationships, understanding how to sustain relationships. I found a tribe, so to speak, in my community that I can reach out to when needed, and also be available when they need me as well. That's important. And my self-esteem has gone up a whole lot. I mean, people say it all the time, oh man, Rodney Elliott, Dunbar, University of Maryland basketball, but I still get nervous when I have to speak at different speaking engagements. I still get nervous when I've got to go in front of some students and talk to them about participating. But that's that nervous energy that I relate to basketball as well, because when I'm nervous, that means I'm excited. I'm ready to go. But then once I get going, once I get playing, I'm good to go. Once I get talking, and once the patience day or once the event gets started, okay, it's smooth sailing for me. So that was awesome, man. You dropped some good jewels on that. And I know you're a busy guy, and I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but I do want to talk to Luke. But what Luke's got going on now? What is Luke Hooper has his hand in now? Another title that I didn't mention is venture capitalist. Oh man, that's had to Google that, look at that a couple times before I brought the question to you. So, talk to me a little bit about what you got going on in that space, Luke.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, and I want to go back to something you said earlier.
Yes, go ahead.
Right?
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think that like all the things that we're talking about, building healthy self-esteem, building a company that you care about, whether it's a nonprofit or for-profit, whatever it is, all of those things feed into like healthy mental health.
Oof.
Right? Like we have so many things in our community that tell us we can't do this. We're subhuman, that we're not worthy of love, that we're not worthy of even our own self-love, right? That it's important for us to put our hands and our labor to things that build up a healthier sort of version of ourselves in this way, because it leads to good mental health as well, right? Good financial health equals good mental health. You can't have one without the other. And so, I mean, you can be incredibly poor, right, and still have good mental health, right? But not having your needs met in any way whatsoever, I think, is what has led to a lot of like the demise of our of capitalism within our communities, right? And I am focused on that, and so all of these themes to me go together, right? So now we're talking about Latimer Ventures, right? To me, it's the same mission, right? It's connected to my work at University of Maryland, Baltimore. The distinguished scholar role, presidential scholar role. It's all connected because, ultimately I am trying to increase the flow of capital to people who don't have access to it, to people who don't have access to the capital markets, right? And the most efficient way for me to do that was to raise a bunch of money and then, invest in great companies that, bring them closer to outcomes that like put money in their pocket, put money in investors' pocket, which in turn helps them put money into their own communities, right? So we're investing in Black founders who are building technology companies, and we're helping them exit those companies to big companies after a sale. And that work to me is the same as the work that I'm doing with B360 and Brittany, and trying to help her, raise money, build her thing up so she can help more kids learn about STEM through dirt bikes. Right? Because if that happens, more kids are going to care about tech, and more kids are going to do tech and deliver great ideas that exist within the hood today that can't get out. And as they mature through the funnel, they become great founders that I can write checks to and help them exit, right? So it's all connected to me, right? I'll wrap it with this one story, right? How I know it's all connected, because I gave a speech on this exact subject. Again, Latimer Ventures is a $50 million enterprise tech focused fund that I'm raising, actively currently, right? But I'm giving a speech around these topics for Will Barton. Will Barton has a top 100 camp, right? That he does every year. You know that camp, right?
Yep.
All top 100 kids from across the country at that camp, and they brought me in to speak. So I was the keynote, spoke. Great conversation, great kids, all that stuff, right? Rocked the speech. I left that conversation at the best school, right? Not the best school, the seed school. And I'm coming down Pratt Street. You know where I'm at, Rodney. Coming down Pratt Street on the west side, right? Before you get downtown, like the real Pratt Street, right? Real Pratt Street. To me, Pratt Street in my mind is like Rodeo Drive, right? Like in LA, you got Rodeo Drive where all the goddamn,
boutiques and
Gucci, Louis Vuitton is. Yeah. But then you got Rodeo Drive in the hood. You know what I mean? Yeah. And so like for me, that is exactly what that represented. And so for me, that was like, that's the real, right? And so coming down Pratt Street, on the real side of Pratt Street, I'm like right before probably like 3 blocks before South Cary. And so like as I'm coming down, and I drive a Tesla, as you know, Rodney. Right. And I'm pulling in my Tesla, like doing probably 30, 40 miles an hour. right? And I look to my left, and there's a kid. This is 9:30 at night. I'm coming from giving this speech about these exact topics. There's a kid, 16-year-old kid standing straight up, going just as fast as me. He not holding on to no handlebars or nothing. He's just standing straight up like doing this. I'm like, what the hell is going on? And so I come up to the stoplight and I look at him, and this kid is holding a Comcast TV remote, and he's standing on a baseboard with wheels under it, and it's got wires and everything connected to it, and the remote control is controlling his speed. It goes, top speed was like 30 miles an hour, right? And I'm like, bro, what is this? Like, what? He's like, I just was bored. I just wanted to do it. I wanted my own like little, transportation vehicle. 16-year-old kid in Baltimore. You can't tell me that genius is not in these neighborhoods and it can't get out. And the work that I'm doing at University of Maryland, Baltimore, to expose more of our budgets, to expose more of, entrepreneurship opportunity, training, all of that to our community, which in turn hopefully creates more entrepreneurs that I can invest in. It is exactly the work, right? And those all things are connected in my mind.
They're all definitely connected. I love the way that I've always taken you, Mechanic, for someone that goes into a room and he listens with not only his ears, but you listen with your eyes and your body. Like, you always have the opportunity to read the room, right? And I've learned that skill too, like how to read the room. And when you can do that, you're able to go in different pockets where you can go talk to seed school, then you can go in the president's office, you can come to patients program. And I called out of Luke, you mind getting up on stage? Give me a quick conversation real quick.
Yeah.
And that's awesome and fantastic. But to recognize the talent that is in our city is awesome, and it takes a special eye for that. And that's, again, part of your upbringing, part of your lived experiences, as far as your tribe is concerned, them pouring into you, having that self-esteem, that healthy self-esteem. I see it all the time, man. And, best of luck to what you got going on. I know you're going to continue to rock. I know you're going to raise those funds. I know that's not what you really set out to do in the beginning, but you figured out a way to make it work. So, that's going to be awesome. But you definitely have a roadmap that is tangible, a roadmap has speed bumps. It's going to have potholes, but what it's going to have is an engine that's going to keep on going.
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
Luke, that's fantastic, man. I
Thank
appreciate you jumping on, joining us here on the bridge.
Thank you.
Had an awesome time, and I don't know about you, but I'm not playing no more ball.
Yeah, my knee's done, man.
Dude, I texted you this morning saying, hey, Luke, I'm going to the gym, and I look forward to our conversation. I was on the treadmill walking, did a little ab work, and called it a day.
That's it.
That's it.
Bro, that's it. I don't know. I mean, Kurt was our age doing what he was doing on the court. And then he tore his knee up too, but I'm good. I'm good on that.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm good on that.
For
Yeah,
sure.
no, I appreciate this conversation. Thank you for having me. Ultimately, we're all in community with each other, and our goal is just to be good to each other.
Just to be good to each other. Just to be good to it. That's it. And that's not hard. That's not hard. Not hard to meet the community where they are.
That's it.
And that's exactly what we do with the Patients Program here at the Bridge. And thank you, Luke, for meeting us where we are today. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Bridge Podcast. To learn more about the Patients Program, visit our website at www.patients.umaryland.edu.